Ever walked through a garden and just like wondered how those plants just sitting there managed to get
It
everywhere?
really is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like they have some secret strategy.
You do.
So today we're going deep into plant reproduction. And get this, our trusty 7th grade science book is all we need.
You'd be surprised what's hidden in plain sight.
For real, we all know plants, make more plants.
Right.
But it's the how that's seriously cool.
Absolutely.
So, cracking open this textbook, it starts with two main ways plants do their thing: asexual and sexual reproduction.
Now, those might sound a bit technical, but stick with us.
Okay.
Asexual reproduction is basically like plant cloning.
Like a plant just going copy paste.
Exactly. Making offspring that are genetically identical, no seeds needed.
So, like when you take a cutting from a rose bush and bam, new plant.
You've got it.
Yeah.
That's vegetative propagation.
Right. Vegetative propagation.
Same principle as those eyes on potatoes that sprout.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or those bryophyllum plants. They've got these tiny plantlets right on their leaves. Comes prepackaged, basically.
That's wild. It's like the plant's going, hey, I'm doing great here. Time for copies.
That's a great way to put it. And vegetative propagation is not the only cloning method. There's also budding.
Now, budding, that rings a bell, like from my bread making days.
Exactly. Budding is how yeast reproduces, those tiny fungi.
Uh-huh.
One yeast cell makes this little bud, it grows, breaks off. New yeast cell, identical, and boom. Whole colony, ready to raise your bread.
It's like a microscopic dance party, but they keep multiplying.
Huh. And speaking of multiplying fast, there's fragmentation, how algae take over like ponds.
Oh.
One algae cell breaks off, drifts away. Tiny thing grows into a whole new clump. Super efficient. Explains those green patches spreading so fast.
Like a tiny hostile takeover.
Huh.
But we can't forget spores, right? Those fuzzy things, like on old fruit. A bit gross, but fascinating.
And effective. Spores are like simpler, way more numerous seeds.
Yeah.
Meant to spread far and wide. Ferns use them too, releasing tons, hoping to catch a ride on the wind, land somewhere good to grow.
So we've got plants cloning themselves in what, like 4 ways?
At least.
Talk about options.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the, well, maybe more romantic side.
Romantic.
Flowers.
Ah, yes, flowers, the birds and the bees, the wind, the water. It's all part of the dance, the sexual reproduction dance.
And here's where our textbook really breaks things down. The parts of a flower: stamen, pistil, whole new vocabulary.
And a whole new level of complexity. So the stamen, that's the male part with the anther that makes pollen. And then you've got the pistil, that's the female part with the ovary and the stigma.
So we've got these flower parts, all with fancy names, but they're there for a reason, right? It's like flower power, making the next generation.
Exactly. Flowers have one big job, and that brings us to pollination. That's how pollen gets from the stamen, where it's made, over to the pistil, so fertilization can happen.
So it's not just bees buzzing around, randomly dropping pollen.
Well, bees are important, for sure, but they're not alone. Wind, water, even animals, they all play a part. Remember those burrs we talked about, sticking to everything?
Yeah, those.
Plants using animals for spreading seeds. That's a classic example.
Like little hitchhikers. Next time I'm pulling burrs off, I'll remember. Part of the plant's plant. But before we get ahead, back to pollination, the book makes this distinction: self-pollination versus cross-pollination. What's the difference?
So self-pollination, it's like a plant fertilizing itself. Pollen from its own anther lands on its own stigma, or another flower, but on the same plant.
Keeping it in the family.
Right. But cross-pollination, that's more like plant speed dating. Pollen from one plant's anther goes to the stigma of a completely different plant.
Sounds riskier, but more exciting too. So what's the advantage if it's cross-pollination?
It's all about mixing those genes. More diversity, offspring get traits from different individuals, better chance at, winning at life.
Like diversifying your portfolio, spreading the risk.
Exactly. That genetic diversity, it's what helps plants adapt. Changing climate, new diseases, it's their insurance policy.
Makes sense. So pollens reach the stigma one way or another. What happens next? How do we actually get a new plant out of this?
That, my friend, is where fertilization comes in. Inside that pollen grain, there's a male gamete, and inside the flower's ovary, the female gamete, the egg.
Like a microscopic treasure hunt?
You could say that. So pollen lands, it sends out this little tube, goes down towards the ovary, like a tunnel. Male gamete travels down, and boom, fuses with the female gamete.
A microscopic love story. And that's what makes the zygote, right?
Nailed it. That single cell, that's the start of a whole new plant. Mind-blowing when you think about it, something so small becoming a huge tree maybe.
Starting small, dreaming big. But the book keeps going. That zygote, it leads to a fruit.
And this is where things get even cooler. The ovary, where the egg was, it doesn't just disappear. It starts changing, growing into a fruit. And the zygote inside, that becomes the seed.
Wait, so when I eat a peach, that's a ripened ovary? That's kind of wild.
Nature's full of surprises. But that fruit, it's not just for us to enjoy. It protects the seeds, helps them survive.
Giving those baby plants a good start. And speaking of which, there's seed dispersal. Plants have some clever ways of spreading their offspring around.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about birds and animals, but there's wind dispersal.
Right, wind dispersal, like those dandelion seeds just floating on the breeze.
Like little parachutes, nature's own design.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is.
So we've got wind, animals. What about water? Does that work for spreading seeds too?
Oh, absolutely. Water dispersal, that's how we get some of the real adventurers.
Adventurers, how so?
Well, think about coconuts.
Okay, coconuts, yeah.
They can travel across entire oceans, land on some distant shore, start a whole new coconut colony.
Wow, that's like a plant setting sail. It's
Yeah.
kind of mind-blowing how much planning goes into making sure those seeds survive.
It really is, isn't it? And it makes you think even something as simple as, I don't know, eating an apple
Right.
or brushing off those burrs. We're part of this whole system, this plant reproduction cycle.
Well, we are part of it. It really puts things in perspective. We've covered a lot of ground, huh? From those cloning plants to the whole pollination dance and how seeds travel.
We have.
And all from that old science book. Who knew?
It just goes to show even the basics can be pretty amazing if you really look at them.
Totally. And one thing that's really stuck with me, it's that contrast between the two main ways of reproducing, asexual versus sexual.
Right.
Each one has its advantages, kind of like choosing the right tool, depending what you want to do.
Exactly. Asexual, it's all about efficiency,
Right.
like hitting copy-paste on a successful design. Great for quickly taking over a stable environment.
Makes sense, yeah.
But then you've got sexual reproduction. Mixes everything up, brings in that variation. Way riskier, you could say.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
more of a gamble.
But risk can mean big rewards. That genetic diversity, that's what helps species survive long-term. Changing conditions, competition, all that.
So it's like they're hedging their bets, right? A little bit of security, a little bit of let's shake things up.
Exactly. Playing it safe, A&D, embracing the unknown, it's a fascinating balance. And get this, some plants can even switch between the two.
Wait, really? They can, choose?
Well, not choose exactly, but their environment can trigger it. Some plants can reproduce from seed if they have to, but they'll also happily spread through cuttings or runners if that's an option. It's remarkable.
That's wild. So adaptable.
Adaptability, that's the key to survival for plants. They've found ways to thrive everywhere, from deserts to mountains to your own backyard. Each one with its own story, its own strategy.
It's true. Makes you appreciate them even more. I'm ready to go explore my local park now, see what I've been missing.
I think that's a great idea. You never know what you might discover when you start paying attention to the plant world.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into plant reproduction.
A fascinating journey, for sure.
It really has been. We hope you've enjoyed it and maybe learned a thing or two along the way.